Welcome back, everyone. So, the month and a bit of Wheel of Time has come and gone, and I think I may have finally finished decompressing, or at least mostly finished. 5 weeks of hyper-focus on the Wheel of Time nearly killed me. I mean, I would have died happy, but still. But okay, yeah, the intense hyper-focus, not to mention the sheer number of videos I was making, in combination with, like, my actual job, or jobs, it was intense. But I think I'm approaching an equilibrium now, and I have some further thoughts and notes on the episodes that I've, since rewatched, and I wanted to share those with you. I've already done a full breakdown of each of the episodes, both with book spoilers and without, so these videos that I'm going to do are not going to be that. These videos are going to be, small details or things that jumped out at me when rewatching, things I kind of missed the first few times. So spoilers. This video is going to have spoilers for the entire first season of the Wheel of Time TV show, as well as, the first 4 books of the Wheel of Time, up until The Shadow Rising. There's one very specific spoiler from book 2, and then, sort of more world-building, character-type spoilers for the rest of them. So, if you've watched the first season and read the first 4 books, you're good to go. Otherwise, go away. I mean, no, not really. I mean, yes, I hate the idea of spoiling things, but also it feels really weird to tell people to go away and stop watching. But yeah. Oh, speaking of spoilers, also, possible spoiler for Eve of the Daleks, the, Doctor Who New Year's special. So if you've watched that, or you don't care about Doctor Who, let's go.
Let's be nerdy, bitch. Let's be nerdy, let's be nerdy. Let's be nerdy, bitch.
The first thing I have to pull out is Suspenders. Now, okay, I have to say, it's obviously not that I missed the Suspenders the first time around. Believe me, I caught the Suspenders, and I'm sure every lesbian and woman who loves women, I'm sure we all noticed the Suspenders, but they should have been a clue as to what was going to come with Swan. Now, to be fair to myself, I already had suspected that there were going to be some sexy shenanigans going on there because of the trailer. There was a finger touch in the trailer, and it was everything. I already had suspicions, but I wasn't sure. And now, having rewatched it, especially after having watched the New Year's special, the Doctor Who New Year's special, and seeing there's, some interesting developments there, I have to say, I am fully on board with women in suspenders being code, like TV code for expect some lady on lady lovin' soon. Like, oh, I'm down for that, because suspenders on women, it's a good thing. It makes me so happy. The next thing I noticed comes from actually the second cold open in the first episode. Leandrin channels here to stop the male channeler from escaping through this, this pathway in the mountains. And we don't see any weaves. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the only time in this season that we see someone channel and we don't see their weaves, which I don't even know what to make of that. On the whole, I am really pleased with how this season turned out. I really, really enjoyed it, but I do think that there's some confusion, visual confusion with how channeling and weaving the one power works. But this confusion is entirely based on my book knowledge, because I know as a book reader that only women should be able to see female weaves, and only men should be able to see male weaves. And I know that some of this confusion has been explained outside of the actual show, outside of the episodes, by people involved with the show on Twitter. But unless you're actually plugged into that sort of stuff, which I doubt just casual or new viewers are, I think that stuff is still very unclear. But I don't know if that's going to be a problem yet, because I don't know how in-depth the show is going to get about channeling. Wheel of Time has I'd say a fairly hard magic system, but you could spend way more time explaining details like that in a book than in a television show. People will get bored and they will tune out really quickly. So I don't know. I just find it really interesting that here is an example of someone channeling with no visible weaves. And it wasn't clear whose perspective we were seeing it from, but anyway, it's the only example I can think of from the show where that happens, and that happens all the time in the books. And okay, same cold open, the second one. A possible likely Easter egg or like a foreshadowing. So in this moment, we see Leandrin make a fist, right? And we close in on it, on her fist. Her Aes Sedai ring with its red stone is very prominently displayed. And this red stone, it turns black. Okay, it doesn't actually turn black, but the lighting, like, it looks black. And if things go in the show the same way they go in the books, that is so super cool. Like, oh, I hope that was intentional because it's awesome. It's awesome. The next moment that sort of jumped out at me, it was just of interest, came from this conversation between Matt and Perrin. This whole Two Rivers sequence, like the first chunk of the episode, this part of the world feels so insular and isolated. But it's cool to me that in this moment, they are talking about a war in Galdon. That's Logain. They are talking about what is happening with Logain, which we don't find out about until like episode 4. And that's really cool. Now, this happens in the books too, right? Like there are rumors of war that come in with Pan and Fane in the books, but I don't know. I just like it. Even in this isolated village, like the wider world has made its way in, and it's cool to see. And then man comes in, and I know I'm not the first person to say this, and I definitely noticed this the first time, but just gonna mention it again. It just absolutely delights me that the first person to speak to Lan is Nynaeve. Moving on. Okay, after the evening meal, we see the Alvir family along with the Althors, like Rand and Tam. They are tidying up the common room, and this is something I noticed maybe on my third rewatch, and unfortunately it was one of those things that once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it, and so I'm sorry for pointing this out to you, but here, Marina is wiping down the table, and she doesn't finish! There are still crumbs on that table! She just finish wiping it down, please! It just drives me crazy every single time now. I'm just, come on, just keep going. Okay, speaking of cleaning up the common room, another thing that I probably noticed this just because I watched the episode way too many times, but okay. Did Rand and Egwene finish the dishes? Like, they started making out rather heavily fairly early on in the task. Did they stop making out and then finish the dishes and then go and have sex? Or did they have sex and then come back into the common room and finish the dishes and then Rand went back in and fell asleep? Or did they just not do the dishes and the dishes are still just sitting there in the kitchen dirty? Or did Egwene wake up before Rand and she finished the dishes by herself and then was sitting alone when Rand came? What happened to the dishes? I know this is not at all important, but it's just one of those moments when I was rewatching going, wait a minute. Okay, moving on to less trivial things. The story of the old wisdom, the one that Nynaeve tells, the wisdom who realized that when she was 13 that she could channel, or realized that she could listen to the wind. She walked to the tower alone, and it took her months. This is, like, it's a foretaste of what's going to happen to Swan, or I guess timing what happened to Swan in the past, but that we learn about later on. It's interesting to me that I heard so many people saying in episode 6, like when Swan is going off to the tower, they're like, what, Swan's just going to take the boat by herself to Tar Valon? We already have a story of that. Like in episode 1, we have a story of a girl the same age walking to Tar Valon over the course of months. And no one seemed to think that was strange. It appears to be a thing that girls do in this world. So I find it odd that nobody thought that what happened with this wisdom was strange, but they all thought, well, not all, but so many people thought what happened with Swan was strange. It's the same thing. They're just taking different means of transportation. But of course, okay, looking ahead to Swan's story, it also sheds new light. Like, if you are rewatching the episodes, it sheds a new light on this story that Nynaeve knows about the woman that raised her. Listening to this story, knowing Swan's background, it makes it highly suspect that the story that Nynaeve knows about her life, or about the woman who raised her, it can't possibly be true. Now, book readers probably already suspected this, right? That this story that she tells about her old wisdom being rejected for being poor and from a small village, this doesn't make sense from the point of view of the books. Rank before coming to the tower has little or no relevance once you are there. But for those who didn't read the books, hopefully they caught on when episode 6 rolled around. And I do hope that helped to sort of introduce one of the most common phenomena in the books, that characters are just wrong about stuff all the time. Just because a character says something doesn't mean that it's fact. Even Aes Sedai. Even Aes Sedai are only bound by what they think to be true. The next moment that interested me, that jumped out at me on this rewatch, was Tam saying that no one can remember their past lives. I think he said there must be a reason no one can remember their past lives. This harkens ahead to the finale, where we see Rand actually having flashes of memory from his past life. This gives us yet another incident of a character being kind of wrong, because, I mean, we see Rand having memories, and Tam said that nobody remembers, but it's not entirely wrong, because Rand's memories are not whole, and it does let us know when that happens to Rand that Rand is unique. There's something special and interesting and, yeah, unique about Rand. I mean, he's the Dragon Reborn, so of course he is, but anyway, I liked that, just seeing that sort of arc there. A moment that I honestly, I can't remember if I mentioned it in either of my breakdown videos for episode 1, but it has to be one of my favorite character moments from this episode. During the Beltane celebrations or ceremony or whatever, it's the solemn part of the Beltane ceremony. You see everyone grieving. They're putting their lanterns in the water, and they're all grieving, and they're grieving with their families. Nynaeve, she's grieving alone. She seems to have taken herself somewhere where no one can see her, so she can cry. This gives us an idea of the isolation that she experiences. This is something I know that myself, like just in my own rereads, I began to read this into her character from book 1. The idea that she couldn't really have friends in Emond's Field because of her position. It's never really said when this part of her life is talked about, but given what we know about the position of wisdom, I think it's a fair assumption to make. And to see it laid out in this episode so plainly, it was heartbreaking. And also, I gotta say, a little bit gratifying. I swear, at least when it comes to Nynaeve and her character, the writers seem to agree 100% with me in all things, which is fantastic. Like, I've always said the characters are the most important part, and of course, Nynaeve is my favorite character, so her character is the most important character to me, of course. But seeing her brought to life pretty much exactly from my head, like my headcanon is on screen. Oh, it's wonderful. Another Nynaeve moment that jumped out at me on a rewatch. We see everyone celebrating and dancing here, and Nynaeve doesn't dance. There's a moment from the books, and I cannot remember which book it is. I wish I could. But Nynaeve says something to the effect of, it's stupid to not dance when you have a chance. And we do actually see Nynaeve dance in Eye of the World, the book, not the television, like not the episode, not the finale. But she only does that once they leave Emond's Field. And when that happens, Perrin, Mat, and Rand are shocked to see her dance. So that means that she wasn't dancing in Emond's Field. They'd never seen it before. This is another thing that I find it quietly heartbreaking a little bit whenever I reread the books. The idea that Nynaeve loves dancing, but she just can't do it in Emond's Field, where she lives, because of her position. It's not that big a deal, but it's a symptom of the sacrifice that she has made to take on this responsibility. Like, it is a position of some authority, but in that position, she has had to sacrifice a lot. And this is a small thing, but it is still this thing that she loves to do that she just can't. Book Nynaeve canonically loves dancing, and Book Nynaeve can only dance when she's away from home. And so this moment from the first episode, obviously, I filled it in with my book knowledge. Just seeing her watching everyone dance, it made me so sad for her. Moving on. In the Forge, we see Perrin and Layla fighting the Trollocs. And this is something that was actually pointed out by my friend Vance from The Bard of the Red Hand, another YouTube channel. You should check that out. Although, I do like to think I would have noticed this myself. Eventually, I don't know. Who knows? You can never know. Once you know something, you can't know when you would have found it out. But whatever. He pointed out in a video that when they are fighting, Perrin picks up, of course, an axe, and Layla picks up a hammer. Which, for those with book knowledge, the struggle that Perrin has between the hammer and the axe, that is quite a major part of his story. And to see it here in episode 1, even in the midst of this, this fridging thing that I'm not a fan of, it's like the writers, they know what they're doing. They are paying attention. They did that on purpose. And finally, I will end on something interesting. This this Trolloc here, this Trolloc has on a loincloth, which which invites questions. Questions I do not want to ask, and I definitely do not want answers to, but still, the questions are there. And that's it. That's it for stuff I missed from episode 1. How about you? How many times did you watch it? What details did you pick out? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like my content and you want to support me, please consider checking out my Patreon. Rumor has it that all of my patrons always return their shopping carts to the shopping cart area. That's how awesome they are. So thank you all for being so awesome and supporting me. I say it every time, but I really am just so grateful. And with that, I will end this here. So please like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!